My name is Mara Collins, and I never expected to see my mother's face again, let alone in the back of an auditorium on the night of my greatest triumph. The roar of applause washed over me as I stood at the podium, clutching the award for my contributions to inclusive fashion. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for posterity. I should have been basking in the glow of success, but my eyes were locked on a familiar figure lurking in the shadows. Irene Collins, the woman who had abandoned me 15 years ago. I gripped the edges of the podium, willing my voice not to shake as I addressed the crowd. Thank you all for this incredible honor. When I started this journey, I never imagined I'd be standing here today. My gaze drifted back to where I'd spotted her, but Irene had vanished. Maybe I'd imagined her. Maybe the stress of the evening had conjured a ghost from my past. As I stepped off the stage, my assistant, Jade, rushed to my side. That was amazing, Mara. You killed it up there. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Jade. Did you happen to see a woman with silver hair near the back of the room? Probably wearing something far too young for her. Jade's brow furrowed. No, I don't think so.
Why?
Is everything okay? I waved off her concern. It's nothing. Just thought I saw someone I used to know. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and small talk. I posed for photos, shook hands, and tried to push the memory of Irene's face from my mind. But as the crowd thinned and the excitement died down, I found myself alone in the empty auditorium. I sank into one of the plush seats, my mind drifting back to that day 15 years ago. The day I came home to an empty house and a note that would change my life forever. Mara, we're leaving. My mother's voice echoed in my head, as clear as if she were standing right next to me. Celeste has a real future, and you? Well, you'll manage. I closed my eyes, fighting back the familiar sting of tears. Even after all these years, the pain of their betrayal felt fresh. A hand on my shoulder startled me out of my reverie. I looked up to see Edith, my grandmother, smiling down at me. There's my girl, she said warmly. I thought I might find you hiding out here. I stood and embraced her, breathing in the comforting scent of lavender that always clung to her clothes. I'm so glad you could make it, Gran. Edith held me at arm's length, her eyes twinkling. And miss my granddaughter's big night? Not a chance. Walter's sorry he couldn't be here, but his hip's been acting up again. I nodded, a pang of guilt hitting me. I'd been so caught up in my own drama, I'd forgotten about Grandpa's recent health issues. How is he doing? Oh, you know your grandfather. Stubborn as an old mule. He insisted I come tonight, said someone had to be here to keep you from getting a big head. I laughed, feeling some of the tension leave my body. Well, we can't have that, can we? Edith's expression grew serious. Mara, darling, is everything all right? You seemed distracted up there. I hesitated, unsure whether to burden her with my suspicions. But Edith and Walter had been nothing but supportive since the day I showed up on their doorstep, a scared and angry teenager with nowhere else to go. They deserved the truth. I think I saw Mom in the audience, I admitted. Edith's grip on my arm tightened. Irene? Here? Are you sure? I shook my head. No, I'm not sure of anything. It was just for a moment, and then she was gone. Maybe I imagined it. My grandmother's eyes narrowed. If that woman thinks she can waltz back into your life after all this time. It's okay, Gran, I interrupted, squeezing her hand. Even if it was her, it doesn't matter. She made her choice a long time ago. I've moved on. Edith searched my face, clearly unconvinced. You're right, of course. But remember, Mara, you're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, your grandfather and I are here for you. Always. I nodded, fighting back tears for an entirely different reason now. I know, Gran. I know. The morning after the award ceremony, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. Bleary-eyed, I reached for it, expecting another congratulatory message. Instead, I found a series of missed calls from an unknown number. As I stared at the screen, a text message popped up. Mara, it's your mother. We need to talk. My heart raced. So I hadn't imagined her after all. I tossed the phone aside and stumbled out of bed, my mind reeling. After 15 years of silence, why now? I made my way downstairs, the smell of coffee guiding me to the kitchen. Grandpa Walter was already there, newspaper in hand. "Morning, kiddo," he said, peering over his reading glasses. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I slumped into a chair.
Maybe, hey.
Mom tried to contact me. Walter's expression darkened. "Irene? What does she want?" "I don't know." I didn't answer. He reached across the table, clasping my hand. "You don't owe her anything, Mara. Remember that." I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. "I know, Grandpa. But part of me wants to know why she's suddenly reappeared." "Whatever you decide, we're here for you," he said, giving my hand a squeeze. I spent the morning in a daze, trying to focus on work but constantly distracted by thoughts of Irene. By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Mara, is that you?" I swallowed hard. "Hello, Mom." "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you called. I saw you at the ceremony last night. You were magnificent." Her praise, once so desperately craved, now felt hollow. "Why are you calling, Mom? Why now?" There was a pause, then a sigh. We need your help, Mara. Celeste and we're in trouble." Of course. They needed something from me. Why else would they reach out after all this time? "What kind of trouble?" asked, my voice cold. "It's complicated. Can we meet?" "There's so much to explain." I hesitated, torn between curiosity and self-preservation. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please, Mara. We're family." The word family sparked a surge of anger in me. "Family? You gave up the right to call us that when you abandoned me." "I know, and I'm sorry. We made a terrible mistake. But please, give us a chance to explain." Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing to meet them for coffee the next day. As soon as I hung up, I called Gran Edith. "You did what?" she exclaimed when I told her about the call. I know. It's probably a mistake. But I need to know why they left, Gran. I need closure." Edith sighed. "I understand, darling. But promise me you'll be careful. Irene has a way of twisting things to her advantage." "I will," I assured her. "Will you come with me? I could use the support." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "I wouldn't let you face them alone." The next day, Gran and I arrived at the cafe early. I fidgeted with my cup, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. When the bell above the door chimed, I looked up to see Irene and Celeste walk in. Irene looked older, the years etched into the lines around her eyes and mouth. Celeste, once the golden child destined for modeling stardom, seemed diminished somehow, her shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. They approached our table, Irene's face a mask of contrition. "Mara, darling, thank you for meeting us." I stood, steeling myself. "Hello, Mom." "Celeste." As they sat down, I caught a glimpse of desperation in their eyes. Whatever had brought them back into my life, it was clear that the tables had turned. Now I held all the cards. "So," I said, my voice steady, "you said you needed my help. I'm listening." The tension in the cafe was palpable as Irene and Celeste settled into their seats. Gran Edith's presence beside me was a comforting anchor, reminding me of the strength I'd found since they'd left. Irene cleared her throat. "Mara, darling, you've become such a success. We're so proud, Dash." "Cut to the chase, Mom," I interrupted. "What kind of trouble are you in?" Celeste flinched at my tone, but Irene's face remained a mask of composure. "It's complicated. The modeling career didn't pan out as we'd hoped." I snorted. "You don't say." "Mara, please," Celeste spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "We made mistakes. Terrible ones. But we need help." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" Irene reached into her purse, pulling out a stack of papers. "We're in debt, Mara. Significant debt. The agencies, the photographers, the designers, they all want their money." As she slid the papers across the table, I caught glimpses of eye-watering figures. My stomach churned.
How?
I asked, incredulous. How did you manage to rack up this much debt? Celeste's eyes welled with tears. It was Mom. She kept pushing for more shoots, more exposure. Said we had to spend money to make money. Irene shot her a venomous look. I was trying to secure your future, Celeste. If you had just tried harder dash. Enough, Gran Edith interjected, her voice sharp. You can't blame your daughter for your poor decisions, Irene. I nodded, a surge of gratitude for my grandmother washing over me.
She's right.
This isn't Celeste's fault. It's yours, Mom. You're the one who dragged her into this mess. Irene's facade cracked, desperation seeping through. Please, Mara. We have nowhere else to turn. Your father. He left us when the money ran out. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Dad had left them too? For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered the years of loneliness, of feeling unwanted and discarded. That's awful, I said, my voice cold. But it doesn't change anything. You made your choice 15 years ago. You chose Celeste's career over me. Now you want me to bail you out. We're family, Irene pleaded. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. No, we're not. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family stands by you no matter what. I glanced at Gran Edith, who nodded encouragingly. My real family is sitting right here. I continued, gesturing to my grandmother. They took me in when you threw me away. They supported my dreams, believed in me when no one else did. Celeste burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. Irene reached out, trying to grasp my arm. Mara, please. We have nowhere else to go. I stepped back, out of her reach. That's not my problem. You made your bed. Now lie in it. As I turned to leave, Celeste's broken voice stopped me. I'm sorry, Mara. I'm so sorry for everything. I paused, looking back at my sister. For the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the golden child who'd stolen my parents' love, but as another victim of our mother's delusions. I know, Celeste, I said softly, but I can't help you. Not like this. With that, I walked out of the cafe, Gran Edith by my side. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I'd carried the pain of their abandonment, letting it fuel my ambitions. But now, faced with their desperation, I realized I'd outgrown that pain. I'm proud of you, Mara, Gran Edith said, squeezing my hand. You stood your ground. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Thanks, Gran. I couldn't have done it without you and Grandpa. As we walked home, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. Not because of the family that had left me, but because of the one that had chosen to stay. The weeks following my confrontation with Irene and Celeste were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into my work, channeling my emotions into a new collection that pushed the boundaries of inclusive fashion even further. My team could sense the intensity radiating off me, but they matched my energy, working tirelessly to bring my vision to life. One particularly late night at the studio, my assistant Jade approached me cautiously. Mara, there's someone from Fashion Forward magazine here to see you. They want to do a feature on your brand. I looked up from my sketches, surprised. Fashion Forward was one of the most prestigious publications in the industry. Their endorsement could catapult my brand to new heights. Send them in, I said, straightening my posture and smoothing down my hair. The interviewer, a sharp-eyed woman named Vanessa, wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. Mara Collins, your rise in the fashion world has been meteoric. What drives you to create such innovative, inclusive designs? I paused, considering my words carefully. Fashion should be for everyone, not just a select few. My designs are a reflection of the world I want to see, one where everyone feels seen and valued. Vanessa nodded, scribbling in her notebook. And your background? How has it influenced your work? For a moment, I was tempted to gloss over my past, to present a polished version of my story. But then I remembered the strength I'd found in facing my family, in owning my truth. I was abandoned by my parents when I was 15, I said, my voice steady. They chose to pursue my sister's modeling career, leaving me behind. But my grandparents took me in, showed me what unconditional love and support look like. My designs are a testament to that, to the idea that everyone deserves to feel beautiful and worthy, regardless of their circumstances. Vanessa's eyes widened. That's quite a story. How do you think your family would react to your success now? I shrugged, a wry smile playing on my lips. I wouldn't know. We're not in contact. The interview continued, delving into the technical aspects of my designs and my vision for the future of the brand. By the time Vanessa left, I felt drained, but oddly liberated. For the first time, I'd spoken publicly about my past, and the world hadn't ended. Little did I know that interview would change everything. A week later, the fashion-forward feature hit newsstands. My phone exploded with notifications, congratulatory messages, interview requests, and a flood of new orders for my designs. But among the sea of notifications, one message stood out. Mara, I saw the article. We need to talk. Dad. My heart raced as I stared at the screen. After 15 years of silence, my father had reached out. I showed the message to Gran Edith, who frowned deeply. You don't owe him anything, Mara, she said, her voice laced with concern. I know, I replied, my finger hovering over the delete button. But something stopped me. But maybe I need this. For closure. Gran Edith squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, we're here for you. I nodded, taking a deep breath before typing out a response. Okay. When and where? The reply came almost instantly. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at the Riverside Cafe. As I set my phone down, a mix of emotions swirled within me, anxiety, curiosity, and a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation, but hope for answers, for understanding. That night, as I lay in bed, memories of my father flooded back. His quiet presence, always overshadowed by Irene's domineering personality. The rare moments of connection we'd shared before everything fell apart. I wondered what version of Graham Collins I would meet tomorrow, the passive man who had allowed his family to be torn apart, or someone who had finally found his voice. As sleep finally claimed me, one thought echoed in my mind. Whatever happened at that cafe, I would face it on my terms. I was no longer the abandoned girl seeking approval. I was Mara Collins, fashion innovator and survivor. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, could shake that foundation. The Riverside Cafe buzzed with lunchtime chatter as I arrived, my heart pounding in my chest. I spotted him immediately, Graham Collins, my father, looking older and more worn than I remembered. His eyes lit up when he saw me, a mixture of pride and regret etched across his face. Mara, he said, standing as I approached. You look incredible. I nodded curtly, taking a seat across from him. Hello, Dad. An awkward silence fell between us. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, clearly unsure where to begin. I saw your interview, he finally said. You've done so well for yourself. No thanks to you, I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. He flinched but nodded. I deserve that. Mara, I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am for what happened. For leaving you behind. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Why now, Dad? Why reach out after all this time? Graham sighed heavily. Honestly, because I finally found the courage. Seeing you in that magazine, hearing your story, it made me realize how badly I'd failed you. As he spoke, a commotion near the cafe entrance caught my attention. My blood ran cold as I recognized the two figures making their way towards us, Irene and Celeste. What is this? I hissed, turning back to my father. Did you set me up? His eyes widened in genuine surprise. No, Mara, I swear. I had no idea they'd be here. Before I could respond, Irene's saccharine voice cut through the air. Mara, darling. What a delightful coincidence. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. This is no coincidence. You planned this, didn't you? Celeste at least had the decency to look ashamed, but Irene's face was a mask of innocence. Of course not, dear. We were just in the neighborhood and spotted you through the window. Isn't this lovely? The whole family reunited at last. We are not family. I spat, my composure cracking. You made that clear when you abandoned me. Graham stood, placing a hand on my arm. Mara, please. Maybe this is a chance for us all to talk, to clear the air. I jerked away from his touch. Clear the air? There's nothing to clear. You all made your choices, and I've made mine. Irene's facade finally slipped, desperation seeping into her voice. Mara, we need your help. The debts, they're overwhelming. We have nowhere else to turn. And there it was, the real reason for this ambush. Not reconciliation, not genuine remorse, but cold, hard cash. So that's what this is about, I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You don't want me back. You want my money. Celeste stepped forward, tears in her eyes. It's not like that, Mara. We've made mistakes, terrible ones. But we're family. Doesn't that count for something? I looked at each of them in turn. Graham, guilt-ridden but still passive. Celeste, broken and desperate. And Irene, calculating even in her plea for help. For a moment, I saw them as they truly were, not the larger-than-life figures of my childhood trauma, but flawed, struggling humans. But then I remembered the years of loneliness, of feeling unwanted and discarded. I thought of Edith and Walter, who had shown me what true family meant. Family? I said, my voice steady. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family stands by you no matter what. You're not my family. You're just ghosts from a past I've outgrown. With that, I grabbed my purse and turned to leave. Irene's hand shot out, grasping my arm. Mara, please. We have nowhere else to go. I pulled away, fixing her with a steely gaze. That's not my problem. You made your bed 15 years ago. Now lie in it. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Celeste's sobs and Irene's angry hiss. But I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I felt truly free of their shadow. Whatever guilt or obligation I had carried was gone, replaced by a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Gran Edith. Everything okay, dear? I smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude for my real family. Everything's perfect, Gran. I typed back. I'm coming home. The week following the cafe confrontation passed in a blur of work and sleepless nights. I threw myself into finalizing designs for my upcoming collection, desperate to keep my mind occupied. But the ghosts of my past refused to stay buried. On Friday evening, as I was packing up to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a message from Gran Edith. Dinner tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Your father and sister will be there. Please come, Mara. For me. My stomach churned. The last thing I wanted was another family showdown. But I couldn't refuse Gran Edith. She'd stood by me through everything. I owed her this much. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. I stood on my grandparents' porch, hand poised to knock, when the door swung open. Grandpa Walter's warm smile greeted me. There's our girl, he said, pulling me into a hug. Come on in. Everyone's waiting. The tension in the dining room was palpable as I entered. Dad and Celeste sat rigidly at the table, while Irene was notably absent. Gran Edith bustled about, laying out dishes with forced cheerfulness. Mara, dear, have a seat, she said, gesturing to an empty chair. I've made your favorite pot roast. I sat down, avoiding eye contact with my father and sister. The clinking of cutlery was the only sound for several uncomfortable minutes. Finally, Gran Edith broke the silence. Now, I know there's been a lot of hurt and misunderstanding, but we're family. Surely we can find a way to move past this. Dad cleared his throat. Mara, we're so sorry for everything. We made terrible mistakes. I set down my fork, my appetite gone. Sorry doesn't erase 15 years of abandonment, Dad. Celeste spoke up, her voice trembling. We know that, Mara. We're not asking for forgiveness. We just want a chance to explain. Explain what? I snapped. How you all decided I wasn't worth taking along. How you chose Celeste's career over me? It wasn't like that, Dad protested weakly. I laughed bitterly. Then what was it like? Please enlighten me. Celeste's eyes welled with tears. It was Mom.
She
She had these grand delusions about my modeling career. Said we had to move to Washington for my big break. And you just went along with it? I asked, my voice rising. You all just decided to leave me behind without a second thought? We thought you'd be better off with your grandparents, Dad said. We were struggling, and your mother, she can be very persuasive. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. So that makes it okay? You thought I'd be better off, so you abandoned me? Do you have any idea what that did to me? Grand Edith reached for my hand. Mara, dear, please sit down. Let's talk this through calmly. But the dam had broken. Years of pent-up anger and hurt came pouring out.
No, Gran.
They need to hear this. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I'd done wrong? How many times I questioned my own worth because my own family didn't want me? Celeste was openly sobbing now. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the span of minutes. And now, I continued, my voice shaking with emotion, now that I've made something of myself, now that I have money and success, suddenly you want to be a family again? Well, guess what? I don't need you anymore. I've built my own life, my own family. I turned to my grandparents, my voice softening. Grandpa, you're my real family. You stood by me when no one else would.
You believed in me, supported me.
That's what family does. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Dad and Celeste looked shell-shocked, while Grand Edith and Grandpa Walter exchanged worried glances. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You're right, Mara. We failed you. Terribly. And we don't deserve your forgiveness. But please, if there's any chance at all. I cut him off, my resolve hardening. There isn't. I'm not the same girl you left behind. I don't need your approval or your love anymore. I've outgrown you all. With that, I turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the shattered remains of what was once my family. As I reached the front door, I heard Grand Edith call out my name, but I couldn't turn back. Not this time. I stepped out into the cool night air, taking a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The confrontation I'd both dreaded and longed for was over. Now it was time to move forward on my own terms. I stormed out of my grandparents' house, my heart pounding and hands shaking. The cool night air did little to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. I had barely made it to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Mara, wait. It was Celeste's voice, raw with emotion. I turned, ready to unleash another tirade, but the words died on my lips when I saw her. Gone was the polished, perfect sister I remembered. In her place stood a woman broken by years of unfulfilled expectations and shattered dreams. Please, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's more you need to know. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes. Celeste took a deep breath. The modeling career, it was all a lie. A sham orchestrated by Mom's delusions of grandeur. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. What? We never made it big in Washington, Celeste continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. There were no major contracts, no runways. Just a string of small-time gigs and Mom's increasingly desperate attempts to break into the industry. I leaned against my car, struggling to process this revelation. But the photos, the stories. All carefully curated lies, Celeste said, her eyes brimming with tears. Mom would stage photo shoots, create fake magazine spreads. She was obsessed with maintaining the illusion of success. The pieces started falling into place, the constant moves, the vague updates, the reluctance to visit. And Dad? Did he know? Celeste nodded miserably. He figured it out eventually. But by then, we were in too deep. The debts, the lies. It spiraled out of control. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, pity, and a strange sense of vindication. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve the truth, Celeste said. And because I need you to understand. We were both victims of her dreams, Mara. I just realized it too late. The front door opened, and we turned to see Dad step out onto the porch. He looked older than ever, the weight of years of deception etched into every line on his face. Is it true? I called out to him. Was it all a lie? He nodded slowly, unable to meet my eyes.
I'm so sorry, Mara.
We should never have left you behind. It's the biggest regret of my life. I felt tears stinging my eyes, years of pent-up emotion threatening to overflow. And Mom? Where is she in all this? Celeste exchanged a look with Dad before answering. She's in a treatment facility. The stress of maintaining the facade.
It broke her, Mara.
She had a mental breakdown a few months ago. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The image of my mother, always so poised, so in control, crumbling under the weight of her own delusions, was almost too much to bear. I don't know what you want from me, I said, my voice cracking. Do you expect forgiveness? Understanding? No, Dad said, finally meeting my gaze. We don't expect anything. We don't deserve it. We wanted you to know the truth. To understand that leaving you wasn't about you not being good enough. It was about our own failures, our own weaknesses. I stood there, torn between the urge to run and the need for closure. Years of anger and resentment battled with a newfound understanding of the complex web of lies and delusions that had torn my family apart. I can't forgive you, I said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hear you, and I understand, more than I did before. Celeste nodded, wiping away tears. That's more than we deserve. Thank you for listening, Mara. As I got into my car, I felt a strange sense of lightness. The truth, painful as it was, had lifted a burden I didn't even know I was carrying. I realized that true revenge wasn't about making them suffer or proving my worth. It was about living well, on my own terms, free from the shadows of the past. I started the engine, catching one last glimpse of Dad and Celeste in the rearview mirror. They looked small, vulnerable, and for the first time, I saw them not as the larger-than-life figures of my childhood trauma, but as flawed, struggling humans. As I drove away, I felt the first stirrings of something I never expected to feel towards them again: compassion. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free to move forward, unburdened by the weight of unanswered questions and unresolved pain. In the weeks following the confrontation with my family, I threw myself into work with renewed vigor. The upcoming fashion show for my new collection became my sole focus, a tangible representation of everything I'd built and overcome. The morning of the show, I stood backstage, surrounded by the controlled chaos of models, makeup artists, and assistants. My phone buzzed with a text from Gran Edith. "We're here, darling. Break a leg." I smiled, picturing her and Grandpa Walter in the audience. They'd been my rock through everything, and having them here meant the world to me. As I made my final rounds, checking each model's outfit, I caught a glimpse of familiar faces in the crowd. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized Dad and Celeste, sitting quietly in the back row. They hadn't told me they were coming, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old anger and resentment. But then I took a deep breath, remembering the painful truths that had come to light. They were here, not to ask for anything, but to support me. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. The lights dimmed, and the show began. As each model strutted down the runway, showcasing my designs, I felt a surge of pride. These clothes weren't just fabric and thread. They were a testament to resilience, to the power of embracing one's true self. The final model emerged, wearing the centerpiece of my collection, a stunning gown that seamlessly blended elements of strength and vulnerability. As she reached the end of the runway, the audience erupted in applause. I stepped out for my final bow, my eyes scanning the crowd. I saw Gran Edith and Grandpa Walter, beaming with pride. I saw my team, cheering loudly. And in the back, I saw Dad and Celeste, their eyes shining with a mix of admiration and regret. As the applause died down, and people began to file out, I made my way through the crowd. Journalists clamored for quotes, buyers wanted to place orders, but I had somewhere else to be. I found my grandparents first, enveloping them in a tight hug. "You are magnificent, darling," Gran Edith whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Couldn't have done it without you," I replied, squeezing her hand. Then I turned, my eyes meeting Dad's across the room. He and Celeste approached cautiously, as if afraid I might send them away. Mara, Dad began, his voice hesitant. That was incredible. We're so proud of you. Celeste nodded, adding softly, You've created something truly special here, Mara. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of hurt and resentment, but also the lightness that came with understanding and forgiveness. Thank you for coming, I said simply. It means a lot. We stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words and emotions. Then, surprising even myself, I said, Would you like to join us for dinner? Gran and Grandpa are taking me out to celebrate. The shock on their faces was almost comical. Dad's eyes welled with tears as he nodded. We'd be honored, he managed to say. As we left the venue together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't a Hollywood ending where all was suddenly right with the world. But it was a start, a chance to build something new on my terms. Later that night, as we sat around the dinner table, the conversation flowed more easily than I could have imagined. There were still awkward moments, still wounds that needed time to heal. But there was also laughter and stories and a tentative hope for the future. As I looked around at the faces of my family, the grandparents who had stood by me, the father and sister trying to make amends, and the empty chair that represented a mother still battling her own demons, I realized something profound. Family isn't about blood. It's not about perfect endings or flawless relationships. It's about the people who stand by you, who support your dreams, who love you through your worst and celebrate your best. It's about second chances and hard-won wisdom. And as I raised my glass in a toast, I knew that my story, with all its pain and triumph, its heartbreak and healing, could be a beacon of hope for others, a testament to the power of resilience, self-worth, and the courage to forge your own path. To family, I said, my voice strong and clear, in all its forms. The glasses clinked, and in that moment, I felt truly, completely free. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace it all.